Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Afternoon Tea. And today I have with me Chris Haun from Gem Mortgage.
Hello, everybody.
Today we're talking about down payment assistance programs. So, Chris, I know you're very familiar with these programs.
Yes, I am.
I've actually closed several transactions with Chris using these programs. So, just so that everyone is up to date, what are the different types of programs out there?
The programs that we offer the most are going to help a buyer with down payment and closing cost assistance. And there's different formats of that. Some of it is going to be through what are called grants. So a grant is almost like a gift. You don't have
Free
to pay
money.
it back. Free money. We like grants. So that's the beauty of a grant program. And some of them will have it'd be a grant from day one. Some will say after this amount of time has passed, it is then a grant. But having it be a grant is very, very good thing to have. You don't have to pay that money back. The other way that they give you money is through a loan. So a secondary loan or lien against the property. That second loan is giving you help for down payment or closing costs. So in that case, you may be even financing more than the price because you've got your price minus your down payment of, let's say, 3%, and you're getting 5% in assistance. Now you're actually financing above 100% of that price to cover the down payment and the closing costs.
But what's the catch? I mean, nobody is going to give free money.
Yeah. So I don't know if the term catch is really what I would say, but there's always some kind of provision tied to these secondary loans. So some of them are that they're getting paid back with interest, simple interest or whatever calculation, so that lender's making some money on it. Others are it's a nonprofit agency. Their job is to help promote home ownership, so they're going to put money out there to help people to achieve that goal. They couldn't have done it otherwise. So depending on who the entity is and what the clients are needing, we try and just find a good match for finding the right product that's going to help for down payment, closing costs, and in the best fashion to help that client.
Okay, so what about these funds? Where do these funds come from? Is it just an unlimited bank account? Do you have to reserve the money ahead?
Yeah, great question. Almost all these programs will have a reservation process.
Okay.
And most of them don't allow you to reserve or even go after that money until you're in escrow. So it's not like you can reserve funds now and find a property 6 months from now and still have it available. So usually the process is find the home, and then we can reserve the funds for that product. And the reservations are usually only 30, 45, 60 days, so it depends on each individual program. But yeah, we do have to time it properly and do that ahead of time.
So what if I go into escrow and there's no more money?
Well, the good thing is that most of these programs are, at least for the ones that we deal with most, the ones that are funding down payment and closing cost assistance, usually those don't have limited resources where the entity runs out of funds.
Okay.
But I do know a lot of times with the city programs and the county programs, they're only going to have a limited amount of funds each year whatever their fiscal year covers, they're going to have to say, hey, we've got this much money for this many loans, and once it's gone, you can't get any more. So those you do have to reserve when you're in escrow, and if they run out of money by the time you get into escrow and you haven't reserved it, you're not going to be able to participate, unfortunately.
Okay. Wow, good to know. Is it harder to qualify for one of these loans?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most people think that there's this down payment assistance program, it's going to be somehow harder, but it follows the exact same guidelines as a person coming in with their own down payment money. And actually, in some cases, a little bit better.
Oh.
In one area, for example, if you're putting a low down payment of your own money and you have to get mortgage insurance, you're going to pay a specific premium for that. With most of the down payment assistance programs, they've benefited the buyer by giving them a discounted rate if they're also using a first-time buyer program. So the PMI premium might be this amount for a buyer getting it on their own, and it might be slightly less if they have using a down payment assistance program. The percentage is lowered, so super beneficial in that regard as well.
Okay. And is this only and strictly for first-time home buyers?
That's a great question as well, because most people think have to be a first-time buyer, and for most programs that probably is the case.
Okay.
And the definition is usually that you haven't owned a primary residence in the last 3 years.
So 3 years. So
If you owned a property 5 years ago, you sold it, you haven't owned since, you're technically, for those purposes, a first-time buyer again. So you can qualify using those monies the second time around.
Oh wow, so I can just keep buying and selling and keep getting down payments.
You can if you can split up the time right and wait 3 years in between every transaction. Yeah, probably.
All right.
And some of them, back to your question, there are some that you don't have to be a first-time buyer. Some will say you can't own another primary residence at the time, or you can't have another loan at the time. And others say you can have other loans as long as it makes sense that this one you're going to move into is going to be occupied. That's usually the key. You got to occupy that property that you're getting the financing.
Okay, so I can't use this for investment property.
No, always going to be for a person to move into their own primary residence.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Chris. As
so
always, very informative. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Afternoon Tea, and I hope to see you at the next episode. Click on the subscribe button below, and we'll see you next time.